It is a funny thing about human nature. Like, if you pick up a bottle of high-strength prescription medication, you read the warning label with absolute clinical precision.
Right, you check the dosage right away.
Yeah, the dosage, the side effects, the stark black and white text telling you what happens if you misuse it.
You definitely don't read it like a cozy bedtime story.
No, not at all. But then you step into the world of biblical parables, and suddenly that precise life or death warning label gets treated like a soft, fuzzy fable.
We really like to round off the sharp edges, don't we?
We do. We turn a shattering courtroom verdict into a simple little moral about, like, having good manners.
Yeah, having a nice attitude.
Right. Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I'm your host, and we are jumping into a brand new deep dive today.
It is going to be a heavy one.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is very specific. We have a stack of historical, cultural, and theological sources in front of us.
And we're going to look at one of the most famous parables in existence.
Yeah, the Pharisee and the tax collector, found in Luke chapter 18. And we want to rescue it from, well, centuries of soft, therapeutic misreading.
Because we so often read this story and think it is just a lesson on etiquette in prayer.
Right. We look at the arrogant Pharisee, we shake our heads at his pride, and we say to ourselves, thank God I am not like him.
Which is the ultimate trap.
It is staggering. The second we say that, the second we compare ourselves favorably to the villain of the story, we commit the precise identical sin that the Pharisee is condemned for.
It is a brilliant psychological trap. And, modern readers fall into it constantly.
So how do we get out of it?
Well, to escape that trap, we have to establish a very specific historical lens for this discussion. We're going to look at this text through first-century Middle Eastern eyes.
Okay, so dropping our modern baggage.
Yeah, we have to strip away our Western individualism, where religion is just this private internal feeling.
Like a quiet moment in your room.
Right. When Jesus told this story, he was not describing a quiet moment of private devotion in a bedroom. He was describing a thunderous public courtroom drama.
So the stakes are way higher than we realize.
Massive. The themes here are massive. We're looking at concepts like forensic justification, imputed righteousness, and substitutionary atonement.
Big, heavy theological terms.
Yeah, but we will break all of those down as we go. The core idea is that this is a narrative about the absolute bankruptcy of human merit and the staggering reality of divine grace.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand the absolute shock of this parable, you, the listener, first need to understand the location.
Location is everything here.
It really is. We have to leave our quiet modern sensibilities behind and travel to the loudest, most public, most sensory overloading location in ancient Israel.
The temple.
Right? Jesus starts the narrative by saying 2 men went up into the temple to pray. For modern audience, that sounds peaceful.
It sounds like an empty church sanctuary on a Tuesday.
Exactly. But the sources point out that in Semitic culture, going up to the temple to pray means participating in public, communal worship.
That is a crucial distinction to make right out of the gate. In the ancient Jewish mindset, the phrase to pray in this context refers specifically to the Tamid service.
The Tamid.
Yeah, the Tamid was the daily public sacrifice offered twice a day, once at dawn and once at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, let's look closely at the afternoon Tamid, because that is likely the setting here.
Sure. So it is 3 o'clock. The sun is beating down on the white stones of the temple courts.
It is hot. It is crowded.
Very crowded.
Right.
And this is not a quiet sanctuary. Silver trumpets are blaring. Bronze cymbals are clashing.
Oh, wow. So it is incredibly loud.
Deafening. A massive Levitical choir is chanting the appointed psalm for the day. And at the center of it all, at the great high altar of unhewn stone, a pristine, unblemished lamb has its throat slit by the officiating priest.
Right there in front of everyone.
Right there. The blood of that lamb is caught in a basin and aggressively splashed against the sides of the altar.
The sensory details there are so visceral. You have the metallic sound of the trumpets, the chanting voices, the intense heat, and the very real scent of blood.
It is an overwhelming environment.
Yeah, it really is.
And right after the blood is splashed, the officiating priest takes a golden censer filled with burning coals and incense, and he walks into the holy place.
Okay.
The moment he disappears from sight, the entire massive crowd of thousands of people in the outer courts drops to their knees. Or they stand in absolute silence, spreading their hands.
Just dead silence after all that noise.
Yeah. They're watching the smoke of the incense rise into the sky, which symbolizes the accepted sacrifice carrying their prayers to God.
So the entire atmosphere of this moment is completely saturated with blood, with physical sacrifice, and with the urgent need for a substitute to cover human guilt.
That's the whole point of the event.
So if the temple courtyard is literally dripping with blood and the sound of trumpets, what kind of person thrives in that intense environment?
Right. Who belongs there?
Who actually feels confident walking into that space? Because this requires a serious mental shift for us.
It does.
I can offer an analogy here to ground this. Think about walking onto the floor of a major stock exchange during a massive financial crash.
Oh, that is a chaotic visual.
Yeah. Phones are ringing, people are shouting, millions of dollars are evaporating. The stakes are absolute life and death for these traders.
Complete panic.
So imagine someone walking into the middle of that chaotic, high-stakes room, rolling out a yoga mat, and trying to use the space for a quiet seminar on mindful meditation.
They would get trampled.
They would. That is the level of category error we make with this parable. If the setting of the story is so visceral, so bloody, and so completely focused on atonement, how did we ever convince ourselves this was just a story about having a modest attitude?
The shift happened because Western culture has privatized religion.
Interesting.
We view faith as an internal state of mind, like an emotional equilibrium.
Yeah, we think of prayer as a way to center ourselves.
But in the first century Jewish worldview, access to God is violently tethered to public sacrifice.
Violently tethered.
Yes. The issue at stake in the temple courtyard isn't a person's posture or their emotional sincerity. The issue at stake is the fundamental ground of a person's acceptance before a holy God.
How does a guilty human being survive in the presence of infinite purity?
That is the exact question the Tamid service answers. And into this hypercharged, blood-soaked atmosphere, the two characters of our parable walk into the frame.
Let's look at the first character, the Pharisee.
Okay.
Because of 2,000 years of history, the word Pharisee is an insult today.
Totally.
We hear it and picture a cartoon villain, a guy twisting his mustache and planning evil deeds.
A total hypocrite.
Right. But the sources clarify that to the original audience listening to Jesus, the Pharisee was the undisputed champion of national holiness.
Before we talk about his actions in the temple, we need to understand where he comes from. Why did the Pharisees even exist?
Yeah, lay that groundwork for us.
To understand the Pharisee, you have to go back a couple of centuries before Jesus, to a time when Greek culture was spreading across the known world.
Okay, the Hellenistic period.
Right. A Syrian Greek king named Antiochus Epiphanes conquered Jerusalem, and he decided to force the Jewish people to assimilate.
Which didn't go over well.
Not at all. He outlawed the Sabbath, he outlawed circumcision, and in the ultimate act of desecration, he sacrificed a pig on the altar in the Jewish temple.
Just a horrific thing to do to that space.
It sparked the Maccabean revolt. The Jewish people fought back, reclaimed their temple, and out of that intense trauma, a group emerged.
The Pharisees.
Eventually, yes.
Mm-hmm.
This group basically said, never again. We will never compromise the law of God again. We will build a fence around the Torah so high that Greek and Roman culture can never penetrate it.
So they didn't start out as villains.
No.
They started out as the resistance. They were the heroes trying to protect their national and religious identity from being wiped out by a pagan empire.
Precisely. They were the conservatives of their day. They believed the scriptures, they fought against assimilation, and they took the law of God incredibly seriously.
So to the original audience, this guy is the hero. He is the guy you want your daughter to marry.
The absolute pillar of the community.
But the text gives us specific details about his body language in the temple that reveal his internal state.
Yeah. The Greek text says he stood apart.
Statheus pros huton.
Right. He physically separates himself from the rest of the worshiping crowd.
Why does he do that?
Because the crowd is full of the common people, the Amharites, who might not have washed properly.
Oh, so it is a purity thing.
Completely. If their garments brush against his, he contracts ceremonial impurity. He isolates himself to protect his pristine status.
And it isn't just his posture, it is the content of his prayer. It is an absolute masterclass in supererogation.
Supererogation, yeah, it is a big theological term.
It is, but the sources explain it simply means claiming to do works above and beyond what God's law actually requires.
Going for the extra credit.
Right. He stands there and starts listing his resume. He says, I fast twice a week.
Let's break down why that matters. The Torah, the actual law of Moses, only requires a strict fast once a year on the Day of Atonement.
Just once.
Yes, but this man fasts twice a week.
Why those specific days, though? Is there a biblical mandate for that?
No, Historical sources tell us the Pharisees specifically chose to fast on Mondays and Thursdays
Okay, why?
because those were the major market days in Jerusalem. He picked the days with the highest foot traffic.
Are you serious?
I am. He isn't fasting alone in a closet. He is walking through the crowded market, pale, dehydrated, making sure the maximum number of people see his incredible devotion.
That is wild. And then he says, I give tithes of all that I get.
Again, the actual law commands tithing on major agricultural products like grain, wine, and oil.
But the rabbinic traditions in the Mishnah had all sorts of exemptions for minor things.
Right.
This Pharisee bypasses all the loopholes. He goes into his tiny garden and measures out 10% of his mint, 10% of his dill, 10% of his cumin.
Counting out tiny leaves.
Yeah, he is building a massive, impenetrable fortress of rule-keeping. But wait a minute. I want to push back on this a bit.
Go ahead.
Isn't keeping the law what God asked them to do? Why is God punishing a guy for trying to live a clean, moral life?
It seems counterintuitive.
Right. Isn't trying to be good the whole point of religion?
That is the million-dollar question, and it gets to the heart of what this parable is diagnosing.
Which is what?
The problem isn't that he avoids stealing or that he pays his tithes. The problem is his motive and his framework for approaching God.
Okay.
The theological framework here suggests he is relying on the covenant of works.
Meaning he thinks he can earn it.
Spot on. He genuinely trusts in himself. He believes his rule-keeping has achieved a flawless moral resume that places God in his debt.
Like God owes him salvation now.
Yeah, notice the structure of his prayer. He begins with, God, I thank you, but God is entirely passive in this exchange.
God doesn't do anything.
Nothing. God is nothing more than a mirror for the Pharisee to admire his own reflection. He believes his good deeds are currency, and he is walking up to the counter to buy his salvation.
That makes a lot of sense. It is like looking at a spiritual germaphobe.
A germaphobe, I like that.
Imagine a doctor during a plague who is so terrified of getting sick that he builds a perfectly sterile, hermetically sealed glass bubble in the middle of the hospital.
Okay.
He sits inside it, perfectly healthy, completely clean, and spends all day looking at the glass, congratulating himself on not coughing like the dying patients on the floor.
Wow.
He is clean, yes, but he is completely useless to anyone else, and his isolation is entirely self-serving.
That's a fantastic way to picture it. And how does he measure his success inside that glass bubble?
By comparing himself to the sick people.
Right. Not by looking up at the blazing, infinite purity of God's character. If he did that, he would be crushed by how far short he falls.
But he doesn't do that.
No. Instead, he measures his holiness by looking down at the moral failures of the people around him. He lists the extortioners, the unjust, the adulterers, and he points right at the tax collector.
The terrifying part of this Pharisee is that he isn't actually asking God for anything.
Nothing at all.
He has no requests because he believes he has no needs.
Which means he has completely missed the entire point of the temple he is standing in.
Yes.
He is watching a lamb bleed out on an altar, a violent demonstration that human sin requires the death of a substitute, and his response is to read his own performance review.
He totally ignores the blood.
His self-trust blinds him to his own internal corruption. He thinks he is well, so he ignores the hospital.
That sets the stage for the absolute contrast. With the Pharisee occupying the pristine, clean center stage, the listener's attention is forced out to the extreme polluted edges of the temple courtyard,
Where the second man is standing.
Let's talk about the tax collector. And again, we need to strip away our modern assumptions here.
We really do.
We think of a tax collector today as, like, a boring government accountant. Maybe someone who audits spreadsheets.
Someone from the IRS.
Yeah, but in first century Israel, the economic and social reality was entirely different. A tax collector is an apostate.
He is.
He is a Jewish man who has actively collaborated with the pagan Roman occupying force.
Let's detail how that Roman system worked.
Yeah.
Rome used a system of tax farming.
Tax farming.
Yeah, they would assess a region, let's say Judea, and decide that region owed a certain amount of gold.
Okay.
Rome didn't want to send its own officials to collect it, so they would auction off the right to collect taxes to local residents.
So the locals did the dirty work.
Exactly. These locals, the publicani, would pay Rome the quota up front, and then they were given the authority, backed by Roman military muscle, to extract that money from their own people.
And what was the catch?
The catch was the system allowed the tax collector to extort anything over the Roman quota and keep it for himself as profit.
Oh, man. So he is an economic parasite.
He really is.
He is bleeding his own neighbors dry to line his pockets, all while hiding behind the swords of the enemy army occupying their land.
He is a traitor to his own blood.
No wonder they hated him.
In the legal framework of that society,
Yeah.
he is completely excommunicated from the religious life of the community.
Really?
Yeah, he is legally barred from giving testimony in a Jewish court of law because he is considered inherently dishonest.
He couldn't even be a witness.
Nope. If a tax collector entered a house, rabbinic tradition stated that the entire house became ceremonially unclean. He is the definition of a public, scandalous sinner.
And his body language reflects that absolute ruin. The text says he stands far off.
He won't even approach the altar.
Right. He won't even look up to heaven, which was the standard Jewish posture for prayer. And he does something incredibly raw.
What's that?
He beats his chest. I was reading through the cultural research by Kenneth Bailey on this, and it is fascinating.
Oh, Bailey's work is great. What does he say?
Bailey points out that in the Middle East, men simply do not beat their chests. It is an action strictly reserved for women expressing agonizing, uncontrollable grief.
Like at funerals.
Yeah, usually at catastrophic events or funerals. The only other time the New Testament records men doing this physical action is when the crowds are standing at the foot of the cross, watching Jesus die, realizing the horror of what has just happened.
Wait, really? Let's pause on that.
Yeah, the sources are clear on this. Men in that culture prized stoicism.
They didn't show emotion.
Right. Showing that kind of physical emotional breakdown in public would have been seen as incredibly shameful.
So when the original audience heard that this grown man was beating his chest in public, they wouldn't have just thought he was sad.
No.
They would have thought he was acting entirely outside of social norms. He is humiliating himself.
That physical detail is astonishing to me. It demonstrates that the tax collector's grief isn't a calculated performance.
It is raw, agonizing despair.
He is violating the social norms of male stoicism because his internal agony simply cannot be contained.
He recognizes his total spiritual bankruptcy.
Which is what?
What we are witnessing here is the anatomy of true conviction of sin. When genuine conviction hits a human soul, it destroys all our rationalizations.
He is socially dead. I think of a modern scenario for this.
Let's hear it.
It is like a known embezzler trying to sneak into the back row of a church congregation that he just robbed the week before.
Oh, everyone would be glaring at him.
Right. Everyone in the room knows what he did. He has zero leverage, zero moral capital, and absolutely no right to be in the building.
He can't negotiate at all.
He can't offer a defense. The natural question is, what does a man with zero leverage even say to God?
Well, he can't blame his circumstances. He doesn't point to the systemic corruption of the Roman Empire, or a difficult childhood, or the tough economy.
He doesn't make excuses.
No, he doesn't say, God, I'm just a product of my environment. It was a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Because that wouldn't fix anything.
Right. He realizes his sin isn't just a list of bad habits he can fix.
Mm-hmm.
The theological framework calls this an ontological reality.
Meaning it goes down to his core.
It means it is woven into his DNA. It is who he is at his very core. He is totally exposed before the justice of God.
And that physical and spiritual desperation leads directly to the specific words he speaks.
Which brings us to the theological epicenter of this entire narrative.
He cries out, and in our English Bibles, it usually reads, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner."
It sounds like a generic plea for pity.
Yeah, just a quick, I'm sorry, please go easy on me.
But the sources highlight that the English translation severely obscures the explosive Greek text underneath it.
The wording he uses is highly specific.
The Greek word he uses is hilastheti.
Hilastheti.
Yes, this isn't the generic Greek word for pity or compassion, which is eleo. Hilastheti is a highly technical sacrificial term.
What does it mean?
It means to make an atonement or to make a propitiation. It is the verb form connected directly to the kapparet,
The kapara.
which is the mercy seat, the solid gold lid of the Ark of the Covenant, where the high priest would sprinkle blood on the Day of Atonement.
To satisfy the wrath of God against the sins of the nation.
Spot on.
So, if he is using temple sacrifice language, he isn't just asking a judge to bend the rules and let him off with a warning.
Not at all.
He isn't asking God to just look the other way.
He is standing in the temple courts. He is hearing the Levitical choir. He is watching the smoke rise from the altar where the Tamid lamb has just been slaughtered.
Right.
And he points his heart toward that altar and says, let that blood count for me.
Wow.
He is saying, propitiate the wrath that I deserve. Let that substitute absorb the judgment that should fall on my head.
So he is asking God to deal with his sin through a blood sacrifice.
Yes. Furthermore, in the Greek text, he doesn't say a sinner. He says to hamartolo, using the definite article.
The sinner.
He says, make an atonement for me, the sinner. He is so overwhelmed by his guilt that, in his mind, he is the only rebel left on the face of the earth.
He owns it completely. He isolates himself in his guilt, just as the Pharisee isolated himself in his pride.
That is a great connection.
He says, I am the sinner. The judgment belongs to me.
What's fascinating here is that this single, desperate sentence forms the absolute bedrock of the doctrine of forensic justification.
Let's break that term down because it sounds like seminary jargon.
It does. Forensic justification simply means a legal declaration made in a courtroom.
Okay, a courtroom verdict.
It establishes the unbending reality that divine forgiveness isn't God simply sweeping sin under the rug. Forgiveness requires a mechanism.
Because a perfectly just judge cannot just let criminals walk free.
Exactly. The penalty has to be paid.
Yeah.
It requires a blood substitute to satisfy infinite justice.
And the tax collector understands this.
He understands the theology of the temple far better than the Pharisee does. He knows he can't be fixed by trying harder. He must be covered by a substitute.
Because of the specific blood-soaked plea, Jesus delivers a closing verdict that shatters the religious universe of the first century.
We're moving into the seismic reversal of the story.
Jesus looks at the crowd listening to this parable, and he declares that the tax collector went down to his house justified.
While the Pharisee is rejected.
Right. Let's look at that word justified.
The word Jesus uses for justified is didikaiomenos. Going back to that courtroom idea, this isn't a description of a therapeutic process.
It is not about feeling better.
No. Think of it like a judge banging a gavel and declaring a guilty person's criminal record wiped clean.
Okay.
The judge doesn't say the person was innocent all along, and the judge doesn't enroll the person in a rehab program to gradually make them a better citizen.
The judge declares their legal status is now righteous.
And this righteousness is entirely alien to the man himself.
Alien righteousness, meaning it comes from outside of him.
Yes. It isn't infused into his blood to make him a better person internally. It is imputed to his record.
Imputed righteousness is like a bank transferring funds from a billionaire's account into your overdrawn account.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
The money isn't yours, you didn't earn it, but it legally covers your debt.
He is declared righteous, not because of a single good deed he performed, but entirely because his faith rested on the atoning sacrifice taking place on the altar.
And the contrast with the Pharisee is absolutely brutal here. Jesus dismisses the Pharisee with the Greek word ekinon,
which translates to that one.
He actively demotes the town's greatest religious hero, the champion of national morality, to a nameless, rejected footnote.
That must have been a tough pill to swallow.
Try to visualize the shock of the original crowd hearing this. Imagine sitting in your community and the most respected, morally upright, disciplined pillar of your neighborhood is declared eternally damned.
Well, the most notorious thieving, compromised traitor is declared totally righteous in the exact same breath.
It highlights how incredibly offensive grace truly is to human pride.
Grace is an offense because it completely dismantles all human cooperative merit.
Cooperative merit.
It destroys the religious instinct that salvation is a joint venture between our good works and God's help.
We really want to believe we bring at least something to the table.
A little bit of effort, a little bit of sincerity, a little bit of a moral track record. We want to be able to look in the mirror and say, I contributed.
But Jesus obliterates that.
God justifies the ungodly through faith alone. The Pharisee brought a full resume and was rejected. The tax collector brought absolute bankruptcy and was accepted.
But there is a massive theological tension here that we have to resolve.
Oh, definitely.
The sources point out a serious problem. The blood of a physical lamb, the Tamid sacrifice happening in that courtyard, can't permanently take away human guilt.
An animal can't substitute for a human soul.
A sheep didn't commit treason against the Creator, a human did.
Right.
This reality forces the narrative to look forward to the true fulfillment of the temple system.
Yes, and the historical context of the Gospel of Luke tells us how this resolves. Jesus is telling this parable while he himself is traveling toward Jerusalem.
He is walking toward the very city where this temple stands.
To become the final, unblemished sacrifice.
So the temple is just a pointer.
The entire temple system, the great altar of unhewn stone, the Levitical priests, the golden censer of incense, the daily splashing of blood, all of it was just a system of shadows.
They were pointing to something greater.
Jesus Christ is the true priest, and he is the true lamb.
He is the ultimate mercy seat, the Greek word helisterion.
Precisely. The tax collector's prayer for an atonement is answered not by the animal on the altar, but because very soon after this parable is told, Christ will ascend the hill of Calvary.
To finish the work.
The theological framework here states that Christ will hang on the cross and literally bear the infinite wrath of God in the place of sinners.
This is the great exchange of imputation. Our massive, crushing debt of sin is imputed, credited to Christ.
And he pays for it in blood.
In return, his perfect, flawless obedience, his entire life of fulfilling the law, is imputed to us.
Think about the absolute tragedy of the Pharisee in this context.
It is heartbreaking.
The Pharisee was standing in the temple courts, mere feet away from the altar of grace.
He was so close.
He was in the very place designed to offer mercy to sinners. But he treated the temple like a theatrical stage to read his own resume.
He completely missed the fact that the temple was a hospital for his soul.
He died of the disease while standing in the farmable, refusing to admit he was sick.
How do we ensure we don't make the same fatal error?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the cross of Jesus Christ exposes both of these men inside of us.
Inside of us.
We all carry the DNA of both the Pharisee and the tax collector.
Oh, so.
The cross shows us that our sin is so severe, so intensely rooted, and so offensive to a holy God that nothing less than the violent death of the Son of God can fix it.
That reality destroys our inner Pharisee.
It strips away our pride and proves that our resumes are worthless rags.
But simultaneously, the cross shows us that God's mercy is so vast and his grace is so relentless that the absolute worst sinner is welcome to come and receive pardon.
That reality comforts our inner tax collector.
That dual reality forces us to evaluate our own standing today. This parable isn't just an ancient history lesson about a Jewish sect and Roman taxation.
It is not just historical trivia.
No, it dictates how we live this week right now. The historical shock of the story wages a modern war on two very distinct fronts.
It wages war against modern legalism, which theologians sometimes call Pelagianism.
And it wages war against antinomianism, which is a fancy word for lawlessness.
Let's look at the first front, legalism.
Pelagianism.
Right. Pelagianism is essentially the belief that humans are fundamentally good enough to earn their way to heaven, or at least help God out.
The Pharisee is alive and well in the modern church, isn't he?
Very much so. Many churchgoers today have simply created new Pharisee checklists.
They aren't tithing mint and cumin.
No, but they are trusting in their correct, systematic theology. They are trusting in their clean, suburban lifestyle.
They are trusting in their voting record.
Their educational choices or their consistent attendance at worship.
And just like the Pharisee, they look down on the secular world, or even other believers, with quiet, simmering contempt.
They use their theology as a fortress to isolate themselves, rather than as a hospital to heal the sick.
They look at a broken world and say, "Thank God I am not like them."
Entirely missing the fact that apart from sovereign grace, they are just like them.
And that contempt is the vital diagnostic tool.
It really is. If you find yourself looking at the moral failures of others with disgust rather than a broken heart, it is a glaring warning light that you are relying on your own righteousness.
You have forgotten the pit from which you were dug.
But then we must pivot to the second front, which targets the opposite error.
Antinomianism.
Right, the idea that because grace is free, the law no longer matters.
Someone might read this parable and think, well, the tax collector was justified so he can just go back to the tax booth on Monday and keep extorting people. Grace covers it.
But that betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of forensic justification.
How so?
A true saving grasp of substitutionary blood breaks the reigning grip of sin in a person's life.
It changes you.
Completely. When you truly realize what it costs the Son of God to purchase your pardon, you don't use that pardon as a license to rebel.
I think of an analogy here to bring this down to earth.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you are drowning in $1 million of credit card debt. You are about to lose your house, your family, everything.
Just total financial ruin.
Yes. Someone steps in, a total stranger, and pays off the entire massive balance. Your record is wiped clean.
What a relief that would be.
But if your very first reaction is to take that zero balance credit card and immediately go out to the mall to max it out again buying flat screen TVs.
It proves you didn't actually understand the weight of the gift.
Exactly. You didn't appreciate the rescue, you just saw an opportunity to exploit the giver.
True grace produces gratitude, not rebellion.
We don't obey the law to be accepted by God. We obey the law because we are already accepted by God.
The order is everything.
This raises an urgent question regarding how we approach God today in our own lives.
According to the sources we've unpacked, the demand of this parable is total surrender.
We must completely abandon our moral resumes.
We must stop trying to negotiate with God based on our good intentions or our track record.
We must embrace total spiritual bankruptcy and come entirely empty-handed to the cross.
That is the only way to leave justified.
So let's quickly recap the ground we've covered in this deep dive.
We've covered a lot.
We really have. We started by walking into the sensory overload of the Tamid service, recognizing the bloody public reality of ancient worship.
We watched the performative pride of the Pharisee, building a fortress of rules to avoid God.
We witnessed the culturally shocking, agonizing grief of the tax collector, beating his chest at the outer edges of the courtyard.
And we unpacked the glorious structural reality of forensic justification.
How God legally declares the ungodly righteous entirely through the propitiating blood of a substitute, which points directly to Jesus Christ on the cross.
It is a total dismantling of human pride and a total vindication of sovereign grace.
As we close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Something to reflect on.
The next time you find yourself silently listing your virtues in your head, or the next time you feel a wave of superiority washing over you when you see someone fail publicly, stop.
Just pause and think.
Stop and ask yourself, are you holding on to rags of merit, or are you resting in the robes of atonement? What is the secret resume you're trying to hand to God?
Because the terrifying truth is, God doesn't read our resumes.
He only reads the blood of his Son. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.